My son-in-law was already on the operating table when the doctor pulled me aside. That is the part my daughter never wanted me to talk about. She stood in the surgical hallway with her hands shaking, whispering, "Dad, don't do this now." I looked at her face and tried to stay quiet. A man can hate the person his daughter married and still be terrified of watching her become a widow. Then the doctor lowered her voice. "Mr. Lincoln, this matches your wife's final chart." For a moment, the hospital disappeared. All I could see was my wife's blue pill box on our kitchen counter. The yellow form they said kept me out of her room, and the signature I was told not to question. My son-in-law was fighting for his life behind one door. My dead wife was calling to me from behind another. "Welcome back to Final Act Revenge. Tell me where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. If it is late, please protect your health, rest when your body asks, and stay with me." Because that night, I walked into the hospital for a surgery and found the first crack in the story of my wife's death. My name is Clint Lincoln. I was 64 years old when a doctor in Memphis said one sentence that made the past stand up in front of me. Before that night, I was just a retired hospital maintenance supervisor trying to live quietly. Not a doctor, not a lawyer. Just the man people used to call when a service elevator froze, when a generator coughed during a storm, or when a locked door made a nurse late for a patient. I knew hospitals from the walls inward. I knew the hum above the ICU. I knew the stairwell that smelled like bleach after midnight. I knew where records were stored, where old pipes knocked, and which doors sounded heavier when someone was crying behind them. But none of that helped me save my wife. Her name was June Lincoln. She was the kind of woman who could make a kitchen feel warmer just by standing near the stove. She volunteered at our church pantry, helped older neighbors read insurance letters, and kept extra reading glasses in a drawer because she said pride should never stop a person from understanding a form. June believed in labels, not because she was confused, because she was careful. When her medicine got complicated, she bought a plastic pill organizer and wrote on it with a blue pen. Morning, dinner, bedtime, call Clint if changed. She used blue because I could see it better under our kitchen light. That was June. Even her small habits loved somebody. 3 years before my son-in-law ended up on an operating table, June was taken to the hospital for what they later called a medication mistake with complications. Clean words, comfortable words, words people use when they want a grieving husband to stop asking questions. Silas Crow was there that night. He stood beside our daughter Cassie, calm as rain on glass, and spoke to everyone like he had been born holding a clipboard. "Mr. Lincoln," he told me, "let me handle the paperwork. You stay with Cassie." I wanted to believe him. Cassie was shaking so badly I thought her knees would give out, and I was holding June's sweater in both hands like it could still keep her warm. A nurse told me I was not listed for updates. I argued once. Silas touched my shoulder. "Clint, please. June is confused. Too many voices will upset her." So I stepped back. That sentence became a room I lived in. I stepped back. After June died, people told me not to blame myself. They said medicine was complicated. They said grief made the mind cruel. They said older folks sometimes mixed things up, even careful ones. I nodded. I hated every word, but I nodded. Because grief can make a man tired enough to accept an answer that does not fit. Only one thing never stopped bothering me. June's blue labels. My wife would forget a grocery coupon before she forgot a medicine change. If one pill looked different, she called me from the kitchen. If a refill came with a new warning, she read it twice. And still, on the night that mattered most, nobody called me until the door was already closing. That was why Dr. Miriam Tate's words cut so deep. She did not know our kitchen. She did not know June's blue pen. She did not know I had spent 3 years wondering why the woman who trusted me with every label had somehow left me out of her final room. But I knew. And when the doctor said my son-in-law's chart matched my wife's final admission, Every blue label June had ever written started calling my name. The first time Silas Crow brought me the gray folder, he did not bring it like a weapon. He brought it with coffee. That was his gift, if you want to call it that. He knew how to make control look like kindness. He would show up on a Saturday morning with 2 cups from a drive-thru, call me Mr. Lincoln, and ask if the porch rails still needed fixing, as if he were the kind of man who noticed loose screws because he cared. I wanted to like him for Cassie's sake. I really did. After June died, my daughter needed somebody steady. Silas looked steady. Clean shirt, calm voice. A way of sitting still that made other people feel loud for having feelings. One morning, about 4 months before his surgery, he set that gray folder on my kitchen table. "Just planning," he said. "Nothing urgent." I looked at the label. Care planning. The words sounded harmless enough. A man reaches a certain age, and people start using gentle language for things they would rather not say plainly. Safety, support, transition, options. Silas opened the folder like he had practiced. "There are medical contacts here," he said. "Medication safety. Emergency authorization. Property planning. A few home care possibilities. Things that keep Cassie from having to scramble if something happens." That was how he worked. He put my daughter's name in front of every door he wanted me to open. Cassie sat beside him, twisting her wedding ring. "Dad, it is only to make things easier." I nodded because I loved her. But my eyes stayed on the tabs. One said emergency contact update. One said temporary care authorization. One said equity review. That last one sat wrong in my stomach. I tapped it with one finger. "What does my house have to do with medication safety?" Silas smiled. "Not big, just enough." "Big old houses can become liabilities, Mr. Lincoln." "Funny," I said. "I always thought a paid-off house was peace." Cassie looked down. Silas did not blink. "Peace is good," he said, "but planning protects peace." He had sticky notes on several pages. Yellow ones, neat and square. "Sign here. Review with Cassie, temporary only, for safety." I had worked around hospitals long enough to know that temporary can be a dangerous word. Temporary badges open real doors. Temporary access lets real people make real decisions. Temporary paperwork can stay in a file long after the panic that created it has passed. So I did not sign, Silas noticed. He never pushed like a bully. He pushed like a man offering help to someone too proud to accept it. "Clint," he said, using my first name for once, "some families fall apart because nobody plans before the crisis." I looked at him. "And some families get taken apart because they sign during one." The room went quiet. Cassie's eyes filled with that tired sadness adult children get when they feel trapped between the person who raised them and the person they married. "Dad," she said softly, "he is trying." I wanted to tell her that trying and taking can wear the same coat. But I did not. Not then. Silas closed the folder with both hands. "No pressure," he said. "Take your time." That should have comforted me. It did not. Because 2 days later, he called and asked if I had at least reviewed the home equity page. Not the medication page, not the emergency page, the home equity page. I told him I had not. He gave a little laugh. "Of course, you are careful." The way he said careful made it sound like stubborn. After he left that week, I put the folder in the bottom drawer under old appliance manuals. I told myself I was being suspicious because grief had changed the shape of my trust. Maybe Silas was only organized. Maybe he truly wanted to spare Cassie a mess someday. Maybe I was just an old man who had lost his wife and did not like another man holding the pen. But even then, before Dr. Tate spoke in that hospital hallway, before I found the yellow form, before the blue labels started making sense, I knew one thing. Silas always had a form ready before anyone admitted there was a problem. I did not know yet what Silas had done to June. But when I saw my house listed under a folder called Care Planning, I knew he was not preparing for an emergency. He was preparing to own one. I did not open June's hospital box right away. For 3 years, it sat in the hall closet under winter blankets and a broken humidifier, like grief had weight, and I had found a shelf strong enough to hold it. After Dr. Tate spoke to me, that box felt different. It was no longer a grave, it was a door. I brought it to the kitchen table before sunrise. The house was quiet, except for the refrigerator hum and an old pipe knocking behind the wall. June used to say the pipe sounded like somebody asking to come in. That morning, I almost answered it. Inside the box were the ordinary remains of a hard ending: insurance letters, a discharge folder, pharmacy receipts, a church bulletin from the week after the funeral, a plastic bag with June's reading glasses folded inside. I touched those glasses longer than I should have. Then I found the yellow form. It was not bright anymore. Time had faded it to the color of old cornmeal, and one corner had been bent so many times the paper was soft. Across the top, in hospital print, it said emergency contact and release authorization. I read the first line. Primary contact, Silas Crow. I stopped. My coffee went cold beside my hand. I read the second line. Restricted family contact, Clint Lincoln. There are words that do not raise their voice because they do not need to. Restricted. That word put me back in the nurse station 3 years earlier. I was standing there with June's sweater over my arm, asking whether my wife was awake. A young nurse would not meet my eyes. "Sir, I'm sorry," she said. "You are not listed for updates." I told her I was June's husband. She said she understood. That was the first time I learned a hospital can sound polite while shutting a man out of his own life. Silas had stood behind me that night, calm, patient, too ready. "Mr. Lincoln," he said, "let them do their jobs. June is confused. Too many voices will upset her." I believed just enough of it to hate myself later. At the kitchen table, I turned the yellow form toward the window light. The signature at the bottom was supposed to be June's. It had her name. It even leaned a little to the right, the way her handwriting did when her wrist was tired. But June's real signature had life in it. This one looked dragged, broken. The date beside it made my throat tighten. It was the same afternoon the discharge note described her as limited orientation, drowsy, and unable to confirm medication history without caregiver assistance. Caregiver. Another soft word that can hide a hard hand. I took out my phone and called Cassie. She answered on the 4th ring. "Dad?" Her voice was rough from no sleep. "Did your mother ever tell you she wanted me restricted from her hospital updates?" Silence, then a sigh. "Please do not start again." "I am not starting. I am reading." "What?" "A yellow form from your mother's final admission. It lists Silas as primary contact. It lists me as restricted." "That cannot be right. It is right enough to have kept me out." Cassie went quiet. For a moment, I heard the girl she used to be, the one who called me when her car made a strange sound, the one who trusted me before life taught her that trusting one man sometimes meant doubting another. Then her wall came back. Maybe Mom signed it because she was scared. Maybe Silas was just there when they needed someone. "Your mother had a rule," I said. "If anything changed, call me." "Dad, she was sick. She was careful." Cassie did not answer. I did not blame her for wanting the easier story. The easier story let her keep a husband, a memory, and a mother who simply faded. Mine asked her to look at the man in the hospital bed and wonder what he had done while everyone else was crying. After we hung up, I kept sorting. The discharge folder had a clipped packet inside. Medication reconciliation, visitor notes, contact update. Most of it was ordinary hospital language, thick enough to make truth feel tired. Then I saw a small handwritten mark beside my name. "Do not call unless authorized by primary." No initials I recognized, no explanation. Just a line that had turned a husband into a stranger. I sat there until the sun came through the blinds and cut the yellow form into bars of light. All those years, I had carried one question like a stone. Why didn't June ask for me? Now the paper gave me a colder question. Who made sure she could not? The paper did not say my wife had forgotten me. It said someone had taught the hospital not to call me. The next morning, I drove to the pharmacy where June used to pick up her prescriptions. It sat between a dry cleaner and a discount shoe store, the kind of place people pass 100 times without noticing until the day they need something that keeps a person alive. I had been there with June more times than I could count. She knew which counter squeaked. She knew which cashier kept peppermints in a bowl. She knew that the automatic door opened too slowly if you were carrying groceries in one hand and medicine in the other. Mona Greer was still behind the counter. Older now, so was I. She looked at me over her glasses, and her face changed before I said a word. "Clint Lincoln," she said softly. "I was sorry about June." "Thank you." I placed the old refill slip on the counter, then the blue pill organizer. Mona did not touch it right away. People who work around medicine learn respect for small plastic boxes. They know those little compartments can hold a person's mornings, meals, sleep, and sometimes the thin line between ordinary life and an ambulance ride. "I need to ask what you can tell me," I said. "Legally." That last word mattered. I was not there to make her break rules. I had seen enough paperwork twisted into weapons. I did not want truth if it had to arrive dirty. Mona pulled the slip closer. "This is old. 3 years." She read the date. Then she read the pickup line. Her mouth tightened. "Authorized caregiver," she said. "Who?" She turned the paper so I could see it. Silas Crow. The name sat there in plain ink, as calm as a man waiting in church. I felt the counter under my palms. Was that normal? Mona looked toward the back shelves, then lowered her voice. "June usually came herself, or you came with her. If something changed, she called ahead. She was careful. She was. This one was different. Different. That word can either open a door or close one. Mona chose to open it just enough. She tapped the slip. One refill was early, one was delayed, and this warning label should have been attached to the outside bag. Was it? I cannot swear what left this counter after 3 years. But June would have noticed if it wasn't there. I opened the organizer. The blue labels were faded, but still readable. Morning, dinner, bedtime. Call Clint if changed. Mona's eyes moved across the handwriting. She wrote that. Every word. On the dinner slot, a white label had been pasted over part of the blue one. I had seen it before, but grief had made me lazy with details. I thought maybe June had updated it. Maybe Cassie had helped. Mona leaned closer. The white label read, "Updated by caregiver." No date, no initials. Just authority without a face. Before I tell you what was hidden in the gray folder, let me ask you something. If someone in your family said, "Don't worry, I'll handle the medicine and the paperwork," would you trust them? Or would you still keep your own copy? Tell me in the comments, because that day I learned love does not cancel the need to read every line. Mona took a breath. "Clint, medicine is not just what is inside the bottle. Sometimes the danger is who controls the bottle." I remembered Silas in June's kitchen after her first bad spell, lining up bottles by height, speaking in that calm voice of his. "Too many voices confuse her," he had said. "Let me simplify things." Simplify. Another gentle word, another door closing. I asked Mona if she could print anything. She shook her head. "Not without proper authorization, but you already have the slip. And I can tell you this much. If an authorized caregiver picked up, the pharmacy system would have recorded who was allowed to do it. Who authorizes that? The patient, or someone with paperwork saying they can manage medication." I looked at Silas's name again. What if the patient was already confused? Mona did not answer quickly. That was answer enough for a man who had spent years reading the pauses people leave between rules. She reached under the counter and wrote something on a sticky note. Not a record, not a secret, just advice. Ask for the medication administration record, she said. Not only the discharge summary, and ask who updated caregiver access. I folded the note. My hands were steady until I picked up the pill organizer again. Under the edge of the white label, a corner of blue showed through. I rubbed it with my thumb. The label lifted a little. Beneath it, June's handwriting was still there, thinner now, but alive. Call Clint if changed. I had to turn away from the counter. For 3 years, people had told me June made a mistake. They told me age and sickness had blurred her routine. They told me not to make a tragedy harder by looking for blame. But June had left a rule. Someone had covered it. When I stepped outside, Memphis heat hit me hard. Cars moved past. A woman carried a toddler on one hip. Somewhere down the strip, a man laughed into his phone like the world had not shifted under my feet. I sat in my truck and looked at the refill slip again. Silas Crow, authorized caregiver, early refill, delayed refill, updated by caregiver. None of it proved he had hurt June, not yet. But the old story was no longer clean. The blue labels did not prove Silas had hurt June, but they proved one thing that made my hands shake. My wife had left instructions, and somebody had covered them. Silas woke up the next afternoon. That was what Cassie texted me first. Not Dad, come back. Not, I am, sorry. Just 4 words. He is awake now. I sat in my truck outside the hospital and read them twice. The blue pill organizer was on the passenger seat, the refill slip folded under it, and Mona Greer's sticky note tucked in my shirt pocket like a little square of warning. Ask for the medication administration record. I had spent most of my life fixing broken things inside hospital walls. Pipes, lights, alarms, doors that stuck when families were already scared. But there is a kind of damage no maintenance man can reach, because it is hidden behind somebody's calm voice. That was Silas Crow. When I walked into his room, he looked pale and smaller than I expected. A clear tube ran under his nose. One monitor blinked beside the bed. Cassie sat near him with both hands around a paper cup of coffee she had not drunk. For 1 second, I almost felt sorry for him. Then he opened his eyes. "Mr. Lincoln," he said, still polite, still measured, still sounding like the most reasonable man in the room. Cassie stood. "Dad, please, no questions today." "I came to see you," I said. Silas gave a weak smile. "She has been through enough." The words were soft, but the blade was already in them. He was speaking like I was the danger, like Cassie needed protection from the father who had driven across Memphis because she cried on the phone. I looked at him. Dr. Tate asked me about June. His fingers moved on the blanket. Only a little. "Doctors ask many things when people are frightened," he said. "They look for patterns." That is what she called it. Silas turned his face toward Cassie. "Your father has been looking for patterns since your mother died." Cassie closed her eyes. There it was. Not a denial, not surprise. A frame. He was building a room around me and asking my daughter to stand outside it. "Silas," I said, "why was I listed as restricted on June's emergency form?" Cassie's head snapped toward me. "Dad," he breathed in slowly, like a patient man tolerating a wild accusation. "I do not remember every form from 3 years ago. But you remember enough to tell the hospital not to call me." His voice stayed calm. "June was overwhelmed. You were overwhelmed. Cassie was barely standing. Someone had to keep things organized." Organized. I had heard that word from men who lost tools, money, marriages, and truth. It means different things depending on who holds the folder. Cassie put the cup down. "Dad, he just had surgery. And your mother had a rule. Please." I hated that word from her. Please meant stop making me choose. Please meant let the easy version live a little longer. Silas looked at me with tired eyes. Some men cannot forgive themselves, so they build a villain out of whoever's still standing. The room went quiet. Even the monitor seemed louder. My hands tightened on the footrail of his bed. I felt the old anger come up through my chest, hot and foolish, the kind of anger he wanted. If I shouted, he would win. If I stepped closer, he would become the sick man under attack. If I said what I believed, without what I could prove, Cassie would remember my tone and forget the yellow form. So I let go of the rail. "You're good," I said. Silas blinked. At making people feel cruel for asking clear questions. Cassie stood between us then. "Dad, you hated him before this." That landed harder than I let show. "No," I said. "I did not trust him. That is different." She shook her head. "You never accepted Mom's death." "I accepted she died. I did not accept being written out of her last room." Silas turned to her again, not me. "Cassie, grief does this. It keeps reopening the same wound and calling it evidence." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was clean. Too clean. He had practiced that kind of sentence. Maybe not in a mirror, but in his mind. He knew exactly how to make my pain sound like a symptom. Dr. Miriam Tate came in before I could answer. She carried a tablet against her chest and looked from me to Silas to Cassie. "No one in this room should make medical claims without records review," she said. Silas smiled at her. "Of course, doctor. I am only trying to keep my wife from being pulled into old grief." Dr. Tate did not smile back. Old grief and old records are not the same thing. For the first time, the room shifted away from him. Only a little, but enough. Cassie noticed it too. Silas noticed her noticing. His eyes softened with effort. "Cass," he whispered, "I need peace right now." And there it was again. Peace, not truth. Peace. Cassie went to him. She took his hand. She looked at me with tears standing in her eyes. "Dad, I cannot do this today." I nodded, because if I spoke, my voice might break. When I stepped into the hallway, I heard Silas behind me, low enough to sound private and loud enough to reach the door. "Your father is scared. Scared men see enemies." I stopped walking. For 1 second, I wanted to turn back and tell Cassie everything. The yellow form, the refill slip, the label under the white sticker. The way June's handwriting had waited for me while Silas lay there pretending my love was instability. But I had learned something that day. Silas did not fight by raising his voice. He fought by lowering mine. So I walked away before he could make me sound like the man he needed me to be. Silas did not need to stand up to fight me. From that hospital bed, he only had to make my daughter wonder if grief had finally made me dangerous. I found Cassie outside the vending machines on the 3rd floor. She was not crying anymore. That worried me more than tears would have. Tears meant a person still had somewhere for pain to go. Cassie looked emptied out, like every room inside her had been left with the lights on and nobody home. I held my hands where she could see them. "I am not here to fight," I said. She looked at the elevators. "Then why does everything feel like one?" Because Silas had made it that way, I wanted to say. Because he had turned every question into an attack, and every silence into proof that I was unstable. But I did not say it. A father learns that truth can sound cruel when a daughter is tired enough. "I found a form," I told her, "from your mother's final admission. It restricted me." Cassie's face tightened. "Dad." I also found a pharmacy slip. Silas picked up medicine as an authorized caregiver. She shook her head before I finished. "He was helping." Maybe. Or maybe helping gave him access. "That is what I mean." Her voice rose, then broke lower. "You make everything sound like a trap." Before I could answer, another voice came from behind her. "Clint, stop." Tara Wren stepped out from the family waiting area with a paper cup in her hand. I had known Tara since Cassie was in her 20s. She was the friend who came over after June died with casseroles and practical shoes. The kind of woman who knew where to find extra chairs at a memorial and how to wash dishes without asking where the soap was. But that day, she looked at me like I was the danger in the hallway. "Cassie needs rest," Tara said. "Not another fight about June." The words hit clean. Not because they were loud, because they sounded like something Silas would have said with better posture. I looked at Cassie. She would not meet my eyes. "Tara," I said, "this is not about starting a fight. It is always about a fight when you start with old papers in a hospital corridor." Cassie whispered, "Please, Dad." There it was again. Please. That word had become a locked door. Tara put one arm around my daughter and guided her back toward the waiting area. Cassie let herself be led, and for a second I hated Tara for how easily she could do what I could not. I stood alone by the vending machines, staring at a row of candy bars under glass. Funny thing, a vending machine. You put in money, push the right buttons, and get what the label promised. People are harder. Families are worse. Sometimes the button you press for help drops silence instead. I almost left. Then Tara came back. She came alone. Her face had changed. "Walk with me," she said. I did not move. "You just told me to stop." I had to say that in front of Cassie. "Why?" Tara looked over her shoulder toward the waiting room. "Because Silas has made her afraid of every conversation he cannot control." That was the first honest sentence I had heard from her. We walked toward a quiet alcove near a window that looked down on the ambulance bay. Evening traffic moved beyond the hospital entrance. Blue lights blinked once, then disappeared under the awning. Tara held her phone in both hands. "I should have shown you this before." "What is it?" She swallowed. "A picture." She opened it. The photo was slightly blurry, taken from a kitchen doorway. I recognized Cassie's granite counter. I recognized the gray folder. It was open beside a coffee mug with yellow sticky notes on several pages. One note was clear. Dad, signature. Another, equity review. Another, do not discuss until after surgery consult. My mouth went dry. "Tara?" I told myself it was marriage paperwork, she said. Then I saw the word equity. I took the phone carefully, like it might break if anger touched it. There was another line on a page near the bottom of the photo. Home liquidity options. The words were small, dry, polite. Just the kind of words that could steal a house without ever sounding like theft. When was this? About 2 weeks before Silas collapsed. I came over to drop off soup. Cassie was in the laundry room. Silas was at the table. "What did he say?" Tara looked ashamed. "He said your father does not need to understand every page. He just needs to sign where I marked." The hospital window reflected my face back at me. Old. Tired. Too calm for the amount of rage moving underneath my ribs. "Why did you not tell me?" She wiped at one eye with the heel of her hand. "Because Silas knew about Cassie's credit card debt after June died. Not terrible debt, but enough to embarrass her. He helped her consolidate it. He told me if I stirred up Clint Lincoln, Cassie would be dragged into legal trouble and lose whatever stability she had left." I wanted to be angry. I was. But not only at her. Fear makes cowards of decent people every day, and men like Silas know exactly where to place the fear. "Tara," I said, "did Cassie know what those pages were?" "I do not think so. She believed it was care planning. She kept saying, 'Dad will never go to a facility, but we need options if he falls.'" I closed my eyes. There it was. My daughter's love turned into a key for my own front door. Tara touched my sleeve. "Clint, I stood in the wrong doorway today. I know that, but I'm standing in the right one now." I handed back her phone. "Send me the picture." I already did. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The image arrived with a little sound so small it should not have mattered. But it did. That sound meant I was no longer holding only grief, memory, and old paper. I had something from the present something Silas could not explain as June's confusion or my failure to let go. He had been planning, not just remembering, not just helping, planning. In that moment, the hospital around me changed. The polished floor, the elevator doors, the tired families with blankets over their laps. All of it became part of a place where people signed things because they were scared, because someone they loved was sick, because a calm man said temporary and safety and just here. I thought about the gray folder in my drawer. I thought about the yellow form. I thought about June's blue labels. And for the first time, I understood the shape of Silas's talent. He did not force doors open. He made frightened people hand him the keys. Tara had not shown me what Silas did to June. She had shown me the next door he was trying to unlock. Cassie would not look at me after Tara sent the picture. That hurt more than I expected. Not because I needed her to choose me in that hallway, not right then. She had a husband recovering in a hospital bed, and a mother buried under questions no daughter wants to reopen. I understood that. But understanding pain does not make it smaller. I found her near the chapel doors, sitting on a wooden bench with her phone in her lap. The room behind her was empty, except for a small lamp and a box of tissues. Hospitals put chapels in quiet corners because they know people need somewhere to break without becoming a scene. "Cassie," I said. She wiped her face fast. "Tara told me she talked to you." "She showed me the folder." Her mouth tightened. "You mean she showed you a picture she took behind my back?" She was scared. "So am I." That stopped me. Cassie stood, and for the first time that day, she did not sound like a daughter trapped between two men. She sounded like a woman who had been carrying too much for too long. "Mom died," she said. "You went quiet. Silas handled everything because somebody had to. Now he is in a hospital bed, and you are telling me every form, every signature, every hard day was some kind of plan." "I am saying the papers do not match the story." "No," she whispered. "You're saying my life does not match the story." I had no answer for that. Silas had chosen his battlefield well. He did not only hide behind paperwork. He hid behind Cassie's need to believe her marriage had not been built on control. She looked toward his room. "He says you are using Mom's death to punish him." I felt those words go through me slowly. "Do you believe that?" "I do not know what I believe anymore." That was worse than yes. I reached into my jacket and took out the blue pill organizer. I did not open it. I just held it between us. "Your mother wrote this with her own hand." Cassie's eyes filled. "Please do not use Mom against me. I'm trying to give her back to us." "No, Dad," her voice cracked. "You are making me lose her all over again." Then she said the sentence I was not ready for. "If you keep going like this, I cannot have you near me right now." The hallway seemed to tilt. I had heard bad news from doctors. I had heard pipes burst above patient rooms during storms. I had heard June take her last breath through a door I was not allowed to open. But nothing sounded like my daughter asking me to leave her life, even for a while. I nodded, because that is what old fathers do when their children push them away. We nod so they do not see how much of us goes with them. "Okay," I said. Cassie covered her mouth. I turned before she could see mine tremble. Outside, the parking garage smelled like rain and oil. Memphis thunder rolled somewhere beyond the concrete, low and tired. I sat in my truck with both hands on the wheel and did not start the engine. For a long time, I did nothing. The folder was on the passenger seat. The yellow form was folded inside it. Tara's picture glowed on my phone until the screen went dark. The pharmacy slip lay beside the blue pill organizer like a quiet accusation. I thought about quitting. Not forever, just for one night. Maybe that is how men like Silas win. They do not need you to surrender in a courtroom. They only need you to get tired in a parking garage while the person you love most thinks you are the problem. I leaned back and closed my eyes. June's voice came to me then, not like a ghost, but like memory doing what memory does best. Clint, if the label changes, read the old one first. She had said that once over a bottle of blood pressure pills after the pharmacy switched suppliers. Same medicine, different color. June made me read the insert aloud while she underlined the dosage. I opened my eyes. The white sticker on the dinner slot had curled at one corner, updated by caregiver. I picked at it with my thumbnail. It resisted. So did I. The adhesive pulled slow, making that small, tearing sound paper makes when it has been hiding something too long. The white label lifted in strips. Underneath, the blue ink was faded, but still there. Call Clint if changed. Not printed, not guessed. June's hand. I stared at those words until they blurred. She had not forgotten me. She had not decided I was too much. She had not shut me out. Someone had covered the one instruction that would have brought me back into the room. My grief changed shape in that truck. It stopped being a wound that only bled backward. It became a direction. I took out Mona Greer's sticky note and read it again. Ask who updated caregiver access. Then I looked at Tara's photo, at the words equity review and dad's signature, and I understood the next move could not be another argument in a hallway. Silas had built his strength on forms. I needed someone who knew how to break forms open without breaking the law. There was one name I remembered from a church workshop June had once dragged me to. Abigail Rowe, elder law attorney. June had liked her because Abigail spoke slowly and never made old people feel foolish for asking where to sign. I searched the number with my thumb shaking. It was after hours. I called anyway. A voicemail answered. This is Abigail Rowe. If this is an urgent matter involving elder safety, asset access, medical authority, or suspected exploitation, leave your name and number. I almost laughed. June, I thought. You always did know which drawer held the flashlight. I left my message. My name is Clint Lincoln. I need help. I think my son-in-law used medical paperwork to keep me from my wife, and I think he's trying to use care paperwork to get to my house. When I hung up, the rain began. Not hard, just enough to tap the windshield like fingers. I held the blue pill organizer against my chest and let the first real tears come. For 3 years, I thought June had forgotten to call me. Then I saw the label underneath and realized someone had covered her last instruction. Abigail Rowe called me back at 7:12 the next morning. I remember the time because I had not slept. The rain had stopped before dawn, but the windshield of my truck still held little beads of water, and the blue pill organizer was sitting in my lap like something alive. Mr. Lincoln, she said, bring everything. So I did. The yellow emergency form, the pharmacy slip, the photo Tara Wren had sent me, the gray folder from my kitchen drawer, the hospital discharge papers, and June's pill organizer, wrapped in a dish towel because I could not bring myself to toss it in a bag like a piece of evidence from a crime show. Abigail's office was above a small accounting firm near East Memphis. No marble, no dark wood, just books, old file cabinets, and a framed sign that said, "Read slowly before you sign quickly." June would have loved that sign. Abigail was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, with silver hair pulled back and glasses on a chain. She did not rush me. That mattered. When you are an older man walking into a lawyer's office with a dead wife's medicine box, you are already afraid somebody will think grief has eaten your common sense. She pointed to the chair. Start with what you know, not what you fear. That was harder. Fear had been doing most of the talking for days. I laid the papers out in order. First, June's final admission, then the yellow form, then Mona Greer's slip, then the photo of the folder. Finally, the gray folder itself. Abigail listened without interrupting. Only once did she stop me. When you say Silas handled paperwork, do you mean he signed for your wife, or he carried forms to people who signed them? I do not know. Good, she said. good. It means you are not filling gaps with anger. She opened the gray folder first. I expected disgust, maybe shock. She gave me neither. She took out a red pen and began making small marks in the margins, calm as a surgeon preparing an incision. Medical contact update, she read. Then another tab. Temporary care authorization. Then another. Medication safety plan. She paused at the fourth. Care expense reimbursement agreement. I leaned forward. That was in there. She turned the page toward me. There it was. Neat paragraphs. Gentle language. Family support. Reasonable costs. Transportation. Medication handling. Household preparation. Coordination services. At the bottom was a blank line for my signature. My stomach turned. I never saw that page. That is why folders have tabs, Abigail said. They make dangerous pages look like part of a helpful stack. She kept reading. Then her red pen stopped. Home equity consultation authorization. I felt my jaw tighten. He said it was planning. It is planning, she said. The question is planning for whose benefit? She spread 3 pages side by side. Look here. This page names Silas as a temporary care coordinator. This one allows discussion of property liquidity options. This one lets expenses be reimbursed through family resources, if approved later. None of those alone transfers your house. I breathed once. But together? Together, they create a story. That word chilled me. A story? A paper story. If someone later says you agreed that you needed managed care, that your home might need to be liquidated, and that Silas was coordinating expenses, these pages become breadcrumbs. I looked at the gray folder, all that calm paper, all those soft words. Breadcrumbs. Abigail tapped the pharmacy slip. And if he already had caregiver access in June's case, the pattern matters. Can we prove what he did to her? Not today. I looked down. But we can prove something else today, she said. I raised my eyes. This is not simply about your wife's past. It is about your present authority and Cassie's medical control. She pulled Tara's photo closer. Dad's signature, equity review. Do not discuss until after surgery consult. Her mouth tightened at that last note. That is not care language. That is timing language. I thought of Silas in the hospital bed, pale, but still steering the room. So what is he waiting for? For you to sign while Cassie is frightened, while he is recovering, while everyone feels guilty for questioning a sick man. There it was, the shape of it, not a robbery in the dark, a signature in a crisis. Abigail turned to the yellow emergency form. Now, June, you were listed as restricted. Silas was primary. The date falls inside a period where the discharge note says she had limited orientation. That does not automatically make the form invalid, but it makes it questionable. She would have called me. I believe you. But belief is not the same as a file. We need records. She began writing on a legal pad. Medication administration record, caregiver access history, emergency contact change history, copies of any medical proxy or release forms, pharmacy authorization trail. And for you, we send notices today. To who? Any lender or title office connected to your property. Your bank if needed, your primary care provider, the hospital compliance office, anyone who might treat that gray folder as authority. I sat back. The room seemed too quiet. What do the notices say? That you dispute any document connected to the folder, that no one may rely on your signature without independent verification, and that you are represented by counsel. A laugh came out of me, small and bitter. So he gets a folder. I get a lawyer. Abigail looked over her glasses. Mr. Lincoln, sometimes a lawyer is just a person with a better folder. For the first time in days, I almost smiled. Then she pulled one final sheet from the back pocket of the gray folder. It had been tucked behind a page labeled Home Care Options. I had missed it completely. At the top, in small print, it said Authorization to discuss property liquidity options. Beneath that, a sticky note had been removed badly. A corner of yellow paper remained. Abigail held it toward the light. Only one word was left. After. After what? I asked. She looked at Tara's photo again. After surgery consult. The air changed. Silas had not only prepared papers, he had prepared timing. Abigail put the page down. This folder's not about helping you stay independent, she said. It is about proving you agreed to be managed. I looked at June's pill organizer, then at the yellow form, then at the gray folder. For 3 years, I thought I was chasing the truth about one night. But Abigail had just shown me the truth had grown legs. It had walked from June's hospital room into my kitchen. It had sat across from my daughter. It had placed sticky notes where my name belonged. I asked the question I had been afraid to ask. Could he take my house? Not with one signature, Abigail said, but he could open the door. She closed the gray folder and slid it back to me. Mr. Lincoln, she said, your son-in-law was not waiting for you to get sick. He was waiting for you to sign. Abigail Rowe did not ask me to confront Silas alone. That was the first thing she made clear. Men like this do well in private rooms, she said, so we stop meeting him where he is strongest. By noon, she had arranged a formal review at the hospital. Not a trial, not a courtroom, just a conference room with too much light, a long table, and enough people present that Silas could not turn every question into my grief. Cassie came in first. She looked exhausted. Then Dr. Miriam Tate entered with Janice Bellamy from Hospital Compliance. Paula Keene, the nurse from June's final admission, sat near the wall with a folder in her lap. Otis Branch from Records came in, carrying a printed timeline. Mona Greer joined by phone, her voice coming through the speaker in the center of the table. Silas arrived last. He was in a wheelchair, pale, wearing a hospital robe over one shoulder. He looked weak enough to make any accusation feel cruel. That was part of his strength. He saw Abigail beside me and gave a tired smile. I hope, he said, we are not turning a family misunderstanding into a legal circus. Abigail opened her folder. Then the paperwork should clear it up quickly. Nobody laughed. Silas looked at Cassie. She looked down. Abigail began with June, not with blame, with dates. On this date, June Lincoln's emergency contact was changed. On this same period, her record notes limited orientation. Silas Crow became primary contact. Clint Lincoln was marked restricted. Otis slid the timeline forward. His finger tapped each line once. Admission, contact update, medication reconciliation, visitor restriction. The words sounded dry. That made them worse. Paula Keene cleared her throat. I remember Mrs. Lincoln asking for her husband. She said, he knows the blue labels. I put that in a nursing note. My chest tightened. Cassie lifted her head. You never told me that. Paula looked sorry. I was told family contact had to go through the primary. Every eye moved to Silas. He spread one hand weakly. June was confused. I was trying to reduce stress. Dr. Tate spoke then. Reducing stress does not require erasing a spouse without review. Silas's face changed, only a little. Abigail turned the page. Now we move to present documents. She placed the gray folder on the table. Cassie stared at it like it had become a snake. Abigail pulled out one page at a time. Temporary care authorization, medication safety plan, care expense reimbursement agreement, home equity consultation authorization, authorization to discuss property liquidity options. Cassie whispered, What? Silas leaned forward. Those were planning documents. For whose plan? Abigail asked. He looked insulted. For Cassie, for Clint, for the family. Abigail slid Tara Wren's photo across the table. Dad, signature. Equity, review. Do not discuss until after surgery consult. Cassie's hand went to her mouth. That was in my kitchen. Silas said, Tara had no right to photograph private family papers. Abigail did not blink. People often object to photographs when the paper in the photograph is difficult to explain. For the first time, I saw Silas lose the rhythm of the room. He turned to Cassie. "Cass, your father is frightening you with legal words." "No," she said quietly. "The words are already there." Abigail placed one more document down. This draft claim lists $48,600 in care coordination and reimbursement expenses connected to an entity associated with Mr. Crow. Silas's lips parted. Cassie stood halfway from her chair. "You billed my father?" "It was a draft," he snapped, then softened fast. "A contingency. In case care costs needed organizing." I looked at him. "You hid my house behind my daughter's safety." The room went still. Janice Bellamy picked up the hospital form. Compliance will review the contact changes in June Lincoln's file and any current documents affecting Cassie Crow. Abigail nodded. "And as of this morning, notices have gone to the relevant lender, title office, care agencies, and medical providers. No lender, title office, hospital, pharmacy, care agency, or financial institution may treat the gray folder as valid authority without direct review from independent counsel." Silas tried to sit straighter. "You cannot do that." "I already did," Abigail said. Cassie reached for the yellow form in front of her. There was a new one beside it. Emergency contact update. Her hand shook as she picked up the pen. Silas stared. "Cassie." She did not look at him. "Dad," she said. "What name do I put first?" I could not answer for a second. Then I said, "Only if you want to." "I do." She wrote Clint Lincoln. Then she removed Silas Crow. The pen made a small sound against the paper. Small sounds can end big things. Silas looked at her like she had betrayed him. Cassie looked back with tears in her eyes. "You told me forms protect people." He said nothing. She pushed the paper toward Janice. "Then this one protects me." That was the moment his calm finally cracked. "You are letting him ruin us." Cassie's voice was soft. "No, I'm reading what you asked me not to read." I had imagined justice would feel loud. It did not. It felt like watching a locked door close from the inside while the man who built it realized he was on the wrong side. Silas had spent years collecting signatures. That morning, the signatures stopped opening doors for him and started locking them. Silas did not go to prison that afternoon. That is not how real life works. In stories, people want the bad man dragged away before the music fades. They want handcuffs, shouting, and a door slamming shut. But real justice is usually quieter than that. It comes in attorney letters. It comes in frozen accounts. It comes in a hospital compliance file being opened by someone who finally stops looking away. By sunset, Abigail Rowe had sent notices to the lender, the title office, the hospital, the pharmacy, and every care agency connected to the gray folder. My house was protected. The home equity inquiry was frozen. The care reimbursement claim was disputed. Every document Silas tried to build around me had to pass through independent legal review before anyone could treat it as authority. That was not loud, but it was strong. Cassie left Silas 2 days later, not with a dramatic speech, not with revenge in her voice. She packed one suitcase, folded the new emergency contact form into her purse, and came to my house before dinner. She stood in the kitchen where June used to write those blue labels, and for a long while, neither of us said anything. Then she whispered, "I defended him because I could not survive losing Mom twice." I wanted to say she should have trusted me sooner. I did not. A father can be right and still choose not to use the truth like a knife. So I told her, "You almost lost your own voice too." She nodded. And that was where we began again. Not healed, not perfect, just honest enough to breathe. Silas sent messages after that, some angry, some apologetic, some written like he was still managing us from a distance. One of them said, "Your father ruined us." Cassie showed it to me at the table, Then she typed back, "No, he read what you asked us not to read." I still keep June's blue pill organizer, not hidden in a drawer anymore. Once a month, I carry it to a church basement in Memphis, where I teach a small workshop called Read Before You Sign. We talk about medicine labels, emergency contact forms, hospital release papers, caregiver access, home equity documents, and that dangerous little word, temporary. I tell people what I learned the hard way. Do not sign when you are scared. Do not let one person control the medicine, the forms, the bank, and the story. Keep copies. Ask questions. And if someone says, "It is just a simple form," put on your glasses twice. I still miss June every morning. I miss her blue pen by the stove. I miss the way she underlined instructions. I miss hearing her say, "Clint, careful people are not suspicious. They are prepared." For 3 years, I thought I had failed to hear her. The truth was worse and kinder. She had been calling me the only way she could. In blue ink. Some men do not break into your house. They ask you to sign the form that gives them the key. And some families do not fall apart because love runs out. They fall apart because fear makes people stop reading. June's blue labels did not bring her back, but they taught me how to protect the living. Thank you for watching and sharing this story with me today. Please tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there right now. If this story moved you even a little, please subscribe to Final Act Revenge. Another story is waiting for you on your screen right now. YouTube thinks you will enjoy that one too, so please take care of your health, rest when your body asks, and enjoy the next story.